Hi, I'm Steve from the Experience Designers, your front row seat to the world of experiences. And today we have a very special episode for you, behind the scenes at Marshmallow Laser Feast here in Hackney Wick in London. So come and join me as we find out what makes Marshmallow Laser Feast one of the most exciting organisations in the immersive experience space right now.
Done, dudes. What a show! What a show! Unbelievable!
So we are in, this is our studio in Hackney Wick, and we've been here for like the last 8 or so years, but sort of in the Hackney Wick area for maybe the last 15.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is the kind of launch pad for most of our work. We've got a whole demo space back there. So when you're prototyping new work, you need a tracking system and all the tech. So we have a kind of little mini space for doing all the R&D, and a lot of the developers work on these desks. And but we're kind of a remote outfit as well. So it's always about building networks, cross-pollinating. And so there's kind of a core central team that hold a lot of the knowledge, but nearly every project we do is involving some kind of collaborations with scientists, poets, architects, you know, a really broad spectrum. And that's where the kind of nourishment flows in for new ideas. It's these collaborations that kind of lead to the next project.
Yeah. And can you give us a bit of a background on Marshmallow Laser Feast, just like the journey that you've been on, just for those that aren't familiar with your work, should be familiar with your work, but just to give a sense of like the foundation and that period for you.
Yeah, so the kind of ethos behind the company, it was set up by myself, Robin McNicholas and Memo Acton, and we all had our kind of independent companies, separate companies exploring sort of animation, creative coding, and Robin was more in the sort of live performance space. And yeah, it's like there's something about having an agreement between creatives where the focus is on self-initiated work and like self-funding in order to do the kind of projects that you're most passionate about. So it's really set up around this idea that we're going to take a kind of low salary in order to self-invest and nourish the things that are closest to our hearts. And over time, that creates this feedback loop. As you launch projects, you put them out into the world, they kind of reflect back into the commercial work. And so now I would say that the commercial work, which is brief-led work versus self-initiated, is maybe 30% of what we do. And the rest of it is self-initiated. So we're coming up with our own proposals and ideas and then building teams in order to execute them.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That was the plan.
How did you guys kind of complement? How was that kind of working ethos? How did that evolve in those early formative years?
It's a chemistry thing. So Memo is an exceptionally talented programmer. And as soon as you work with people like that, you realize that you can work with software tools and there's a certain creative sort of boundary to what's possible. But when you get under the hood and you're, you know, writing code and shaders, you realize that you've got access to way more creative potential. And especially when, you know, our work is really thinking about how to immerse audiences and using the senses as sort of gateways to deeper experience and deeper connection. It involves a lot of skills, and often it's working kind of outside of traditional uses of the technology. So to be able to get under the hood opens up the full spectrum of what's possible. So that's been one aspect to it. And then I think just the main thing is the pleasure of cross-pollinating with like people that you enjoy spending time with. And I think we would all say that there's you know, you might have a vision that you're holding tightly, but the moment you sort of rub the rhubarb and go, whoa, what's going on here? It's sort of, it leads to unexpected places, and even just the idea that you know where you're going. You might think you know where you're going at one point, but through a conversation, it can veer, and you suddenly see it from a perspective that changes the complete trajectory of what you thought you were doing. And I think it's that embracing that process leads to happy accidents and yeah, kind of new insights and new ways of doing work.
I love that.
Yeah.
Can we pull that apart a little bit? Just what does that like look like creating? Because it's a culture and a philosophy, and it's an approach to your work. And no doubt, as you've then plugged in different competence, different expertise along the journey, but it still kind of started this kind of core foundation of how you guys kind of set it up. It sounds really organic as well. What's the learning? What's the elixir to extract out of that on reflection for others that perhaps are in development of their own businesses, or evolving their own creative process?
Yeah, I mean it's a ballet between, because there's making ends meet as an outfit that's got overheads, and so you need to be thinking commercially in one aspect, and then sometimes there's a friction between R&D and the amount of time that needs to go into innovation in order to end with the final result. That doesn't necessarily go that well with a brief that's more constrained, and where you're solving a design problem or you're doing an event, you need to, so like, where does the budget and the time come in to innovate and push things forward? And so for us, that was just at the beginning, we just took low salaries. So we were kind of not taking money out of the company. So you'd maybe do a commercial project, which would buy time to do more R&D. And so I think that's like, no one's going to pay you to like develop your practice. You have to subsidize it yourself. And then over time, if it all goes well, it will grow and become, I guess it's the same with anything, whether you're watering your plants, like how much care and attention and time you put into that growing process will lead to, it will lead to places that might be unexpected. And also the projects that you're making, I mean, it's such a blessing to be able to work with scientists, because the deep dive, let's say you're looking at photosynthesis, you're going to go on a journey where you're like, wait, thylakoid membranes? What's that about? Like the deeper you go in, it's like zooming in, everything has to be labeled, right? And so you end up in this sort of terrain of completely alien landscapes of words and diagrams, and it's a whole thing, and it becomes less and less visual the deeper you go. But what I'm interested in is the process that we would go on through collaborating with scientists. You kind of get taken on that journey like a tour guide, and it reveals these landscapes, and it's the landscapes that we're interested in, because then we're taking our audience through those landscapes. Yeah. Like for example, photosynthesis might be a good thing to point at, because traditionally when you're learning about it in school, it's you've got the kind of the equations, there's like descriptions, the diagrams of, okay, so sunlight goes in, it's basically black and white images on paper. Yeah. But what is the experience of photosynthesis? If you could be a water droplet and go on, like you start in a cloud, sort of drop down. I mean, just falling at the speed of a water drop from a cloud. I mean, it's like skydiving. It's an amazing journey. And then you enter, you sort of, maybe you hit a few leaves and you end up in the soil, absorbed into a mycelial network, into a root structure, up a tree, and sort of out into a branch. And then you've got that point where the kind of thicker bark becomes the softer green stem. And that's almost like coming from a cave network out into this greening forest. And then the leaf, you could have an electron microscope scanned leaf. They do it because you can create a single image with an electron microscope, but they take something like a leaf, put it in resin, and they slice it into these tiny slices. Then you can scan each slice at really high resolution. You piece it back together like a loaf of bread. And then you end up with like St. Paul's Cathedral, like this huge architecture, but it's all cells, like all these symmetrical shapes. So you can be going into this kind of, this cathedral of nature. And then on this journey, you're taken, because molecules are super tiny, so you're getting into a kind of space where photons are splitting water molecules, and it's like this. It's a sort of alien landscape. But if you think about what that would feel like for a water molecule, like the light, the photons kind of approaching you, the way I heard it described is it smears into a probability wave, so it sort of spreads out. And when it knows exactly where the energy center is, it kind of feels out for it, then all of that energy focuses. And you could imagine you could have one of those Dyson hand dryers, just it like gets lowered just in front of your face. It's like, okay, 3, 2, 1, hot air, and you're like, and it's like split in two. But there's something about, you know, the beauty of that as an experience, because light is, in a way, it represents the infinite. It's got no mass. You know, if you could embody a photon, then the moment you're emitted from the Big Bang, you know, you can travel for billions of years, and maybe humans open up this James Webb Space Telescope, and the moment you arrive to make an image to sort of, so we can read, oh, what's happening back there? It's like the dawn of time. The photon arrives on the telescope in the same instant that it was emitted. There's that kind of, Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about that stuff. That's one of his lines. But I love this idea because there's something about the nature of consciousness and that really relates to this idea of the infinite or something beyond our comprehension.
Yes.
You know, you look at the sun, the source is too blinding. It's like beyond our frame of reference, but yet sunlight flows through the bodies of all living things. It illuminates our world. And so there's these kind of spiritual aspects that are there in the heart of science, but you can really get a flavor for them when you start to imagine what is it like to be. And it's these data sets that allow you to explore these unseen dimensions. And it's way, you know, it was pretty cool in school when Blackadder would come in, you learn about history. So like, what is the spatial computing kind of AI driven, right at the cutting edge of what can be observed version of that, where you take over the school gym or like a field and you're like, okay, kids, off we go. So this is, I think all the stuff we've done today is like almost a trailer. They're little trailers and tests, but I don't think VR has really fully landed yet. And I think that this next chapter, obviously you've got these megalith companies who are motivated by all sorts of reasons to create, you know, pushing AI, pushing robotics, you know, pushing the sort of human-computer interfaces. All of that is driving forward, and you know, a little artist collective like us has really got nothing to do with that trajectory, but we can bring those technologies together to create experiences that reconnect you to the wonder of your own body, which is like, this technology is way beyond anything that we've ever invented, like just our let alone all the other organic masterpieces that kind of that are all there, you know, interconnected in these webs of being.
What was the point? What was the point? So you just took in my brain. You took me on this mad journey where it was just peeling away, going deeper and deeper, and you're kind of unearthing, and this, you know, connecting with and working and collaborating with scientists enabled you to live that world and go into these kind of rabbit holes and learn and explore as you go through. What was one of the first projects or work that you did that really opened, really cracked that nut open for you to be like, wow, whoa, hang on a minute. We're onto this interesting and quite, super unique perspective of the world.
Yeah.
What was that moment?
So I think there was a festival called And Abandon Normal Devices. And we got commissioned to make a piece for the sculpture park there as part of the festival. And it was always going to be like in a forest up in the Lake District and Grisdale Forest. And so we were just starting to play with virtual reality. And I can't remember actually how the idea emerged, but we went up to the forest, had a look around, and you kind of like go, oh, you know, what would it be like to, what is it like to be something other than human? What's it like to be a tree or a mosquito or an owl?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a kind of stoner classic. I think you just sort of, these ideas our imaginations are so elastic. I think we're constantly stretching and probing and thinking, and but it's the sort of, the technology can be this incredible bridge. So if you say, for example, what's it like to see the world through the eyes of a dragonfly? You're like, well, let's have a look. And you say, oh, some scientists have done some research. They see ultraviolet and infrared. And then they say, oh, okay, well, its eyes are so close to its brain that its frame rate of reality is like 300 frames a second. Whereas for us, you could say that you can watch a film at 24 frames a second and it's smooth. So if you're thinking sort of film frame rates, then ours might be 24, a dragonfly is in the 300 area. So then that means that if you're a dragonfly, everything moves really slowly.
Yeah.
And one of the papers was like their success rate for eating flies is like 98% because they can fly. They can fly with their bodies in any orientation, in any direction. So they can be upside down and fly. They can just do. So when they're hungry, they're just like, I'll just go and pick. It's like a sushi belt. It's like, oh, we're gonna have a fly. And I guess that's why, in terms of the evolutionary niche that they've got, they haven't changed much over,
Needed to.
Yeah, it's just they nailed it. So
tell us more about that project that you did, because that was amazing.
Yeah. So the eyes of the animal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for this project in Grisdale Forest, the eyes of the animal. In fact, there's a Michael Pollan quote which really resonated. It was, to see the world through the eyes of an animal is a cure for the disease of human self-importance.
Great quote.
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it?
It really is.
And so we made this project. We LiDAR scanned the section of forest that people would be having the experience in, and so they would go on this journey, starting off as a midge, like a mosquito, and then a dragonfly, and then a frog and an owl. So you sort of pass through the food chain. And each one, you can think of, I guess, depending on what organism you embody, time, it stretches, it becomes like elastic. So, time for a frog is very different from time from an owl, or time for a dragonfly. Dragonfly's eyes see almost in 360. In fact, we tried to translate that to virtual reality, and if you keep your head really still, it's like you can do it, but the moment you move, it makes you sick. It's just too much. And for example, the owl has got really interesting, it's the way it sees, its eyeballs are cemented into its skull. So it can't move its eyes, but it can obviously move its neck almost all the way around. So
amazing.
And its vision is very much like a telephoto lens. So if you were to put some binoculars on duct tape them to your head, that's kind of the way an owl sees. So all of these sort of insights through a collaboration with some scientists led to the way that we sort of massaged the human senses into what it's like to be these other organisms.
I'll ask a question, actually, if that's okay. How did technology play a part in that? Both in terms of like taking, 4 different animals and then creating this experience for us to obviously engage with and immerse ourselves in. What was that journey to enable that vision and bring that through to reality?
Yes, I suppose there's scientists doing all sorts of weird and wonderful studies, and they generate like videos and photographs. What does the world look like in ultraviolet or infrared? Well, although we can only ever see in the human sort of sensitivity color spectrum, you can use a camera to see what ultraviolet might look like, and then you can kind of bring that into our field of vision. So there's loads of references. Even with like mosquito, they've got cameras that they show heat, which people are quite familiar with, but there's also a camera that shows CO2 intensity, so you can see people breathing. And so it's these kind of you like look at all of these data sets and these ways of seeing, which the technology enables, and they become ways for us to sort of translate it into an immersive experience.
Yeah.
Because in a way, like the only thing that we're ever going to know is, human perception. It's not like you're really seeing how an animal sees, but because the headset gives you a sense of presence where you're not bound by your skin, you can create this really strong impression that you're not in your body anymore. And so there's always a poetry to the translation, but where it takes your imagination can be super powerful. And you kind of come out. I think one of the things, there's this guy, Rupert Spira, and he gave this description of consciousness that really resonated. Like when we were making this project, the two lined up really well. He was saying, all right, so you're Johnny Smith and you're going to perform King Lear. And in order to perform King Lear, you take off Johnny Smith's clothes and you put on this massive gown, this ornate gown full of colour and stitches, and it's like a tapestry, and you step out onto stage. And in order to be King Lear, you can't be Johnny Smith at the same time. And if you did, it wouldn't work. You have to forget Johnny Smith in order to really be King Lear. And so then he said, right, imagine this gown is the gown of space-time. And so every stitch is a slightly different point in space and time. And, you know, every experience is always, you can't have an experience unless it's positioned in space and time. It's like the nature of the whole thing. So you start to think of, oh yeah, so microbes in my gut are a slightly different position in space time. And then he's basically saying that King Lear is you, me, the mosquito, the dragonfly, the frog, the owl. It's all of these sensory perspectives, or, you know, the whole tapestry of beings and life has got its own unique flavour of perception, but underlying it all is one character that needs to be forgotten in order for you to have the experience of being you.
Yeah.
And I thought, you can think of that as a human-centered story, but then what about the slug and the snail? I mean, a snail's like, they're like tongues? Are they just like licking their way through life? It could be, I mean, if a slug drowned in a brandy, that would be an amazing way to go. Just like, whoa. So when you stretch your imagination into what it's like to be these other multi-sensory ways of being, it becomes so rich, and you sort of stop to pause, and it's how it affects the way you see other organisms and nature and yourself within this big tapestry.
Yeah.
And for me, science is like the window. It's like the way of expanding our perception and our imagination into these dimensions of like interbeing. You know, that's a good way of talking about it.
I love that. Because there's a lot more in like the spiritual realm. There's a lot more in quantum. There's a lot more around energy, frequency. You know, also how we perceive the world in this kind of two-dimensional. We see it like this, but I think the work that you're doing just brings this it just helps shift us in such a unique way into nature and the world. We're all connected. We're all part of it, and yet so many of us just walk through life just seeing it in this 2D way.
Yeah.
And so I do think we are at this time. I think it's always been there, but actually sometimes you just have to wait. There's a bit of an awakening that's needed. Is that some that's driving you guys as well to kind of help people, even maybe from meaningful to transformative type experiential stuff, for people to walk away kind of like, wow, okay, I see the world differently now, or I'm thinking about it differently?
Yeah. There's Terence McKenna's got this lovely little statement where he says, nature is not ours to be raped and conquered. Nature is ourselves to be cherished and explored. And I think there's this realization that, you know, I was born fully embedded in this, I guess, myth of separation, the idea that, you know, we're kind of separate beings. I think, you know, lots of people have tried to unpack what the myth of separation is and how it sort of permeates culture, almost like on an operating system level.
Yeah.
You know, if you feel sort of alien to the world and separate, and that you're, you know, competing with all of these other people for resources, and you just don't feel that you're part of it, and it's very much a feeling, because conceptually you might know about, oh, you know, the world is just one thing, but it's really like, how do you feel when you wake up? Like, what is the experience of walking around feeling like you grow out of the planet rather than like you're born onto it? It's like, you grow out of it like a sort of apple grows on a tree. And I think that part of that bridge to go from a mental concept into like really feeling it and experiencing it. You could say that the Buddhists have done a really good job. I was lucky to meet some brother Spirit from Plum Village, and he was with Brother Clarity. They did this amazing guided meditation, and it was all engaged in non-separation, like non-dual, but through the senses. And it was an incredibly powerful way to give you an experience of like dissolving into another like a more spacious form of awareness.
Yeah.
And they'd mastered it. So that's just like words and some music and postures. And I thought that's an amazing way to have that experience. I think psychedelics do the same thing. And also probably most scientists that have gone really deep into their subjects, you know, we're just like, if a scientist is like this slug munching into the fabric of reality, they're like, you know, getting right deep into the lettuce, then the Marshmallow Gang, we're kind of suckling the sort of glittery slug trail. You know, but as deep as we can go, we'll never have a depth of understanding or when they close their eyes, they can imagine it in a way that's so much richer than we ever could. And I think it's trying to get access to some of that to bring it into the mainstream, because it's in that space that the possibility for feeling like you're part of the living system, I think it's in there, and it's a possible, the technology can be a bridge to that experience that, like I said at the beginning, this idea that the virtual experience, it can sit there in your memory like a lens sits on your sunglasses, and it can become, if you go deep enough, it can be a new way of seeing. Yeah. It sits there as a filter. And I think often for those that have had like a transformational experience, it's not like it's happening every weekend. It can be like one moment or a series of moments that shift their worldview. And then if it's profound enough, then they wake up and they're like, ooh, you know, everything, like the senses are so rich. I've got a project about that, but I'm waffling on a bit. Maybe we need to stick to your...
No, there isn't. Just like your creative process. I'm going, no, it's good. Let's go down the rabbit hole. I tell you what, let's do this. Because there's a book on the table here, and I think, what's this a representation of in terms of how you think about stuff? And I'd also as well, Barney, just to get a sense of like, what are you like at home as well as in work? Just in terms of how you think about life, the world.
Well, so my dad is, my dad was like the art teacher in school. And so I grew up, if I was ill, I'd end up sitting in his cupboard and sort of drawing a lemon. He had some really, like, just this idea of when you're drawing a lemon, if you draw every dimple, there's slightly different shadows in each dimple, and you end up with a lemon in the end. And I really got into like deep analysis. I did a pine cone that took me like 3 weeks, and I was working on it every evening. I've got a twin brother, and we're really competitive. He's an amazing illustrator as well, Andy. And it'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling tired, and I think I'm going to go to bed. And so we'd go to bed, and then I'd get back up to like keep the lamp on and trying to get a better grade. Or very competitive, but with love. And that, I think, there's something about the process of observation, and like the deeper you go, it just it directly relates to how much you appreciate like anything, right? So the deeper, it's a bit like mindfulness. So the more attention you pay to something, and so this scientific observation is a real deep dive, but also anyone that's doing illustration or poetry and reflecting and spending time, they're all like these ways to, I guess, expand beyond the sort of superficial view of things into something deeper. So I was lucky that I had that upbringing, and then it just went on. Also, loads of support. My mum and dad are really encouraging, so I had like an unhealthy level of self-confidence with arty subjects, photography and illustration and the creative things.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good at maths, or actually not very good at much else. Just had a creative sort of thing, and then it's just morphed and evolved, and I don't know. I think.
How do you find the space to just for you to reflect and to get lost sometimes, and to just sit with a pen and a pad and just draw and explore and think and reflect? How does that?
Well, that's my full-time job, really.
Amazing.
So like that's the boss.
There's the boss coming.
Smudge. You want to come in, Smudge? Come on then. Come on, Smudge.
Come on.
Come on. You want to come up? Yeah. Yeah, come on, up.
Yeah.
Oh, I said, come on, old
Back
girl.
in the shot.
Come on, old girl.
Amazing.
Let's get you back up here.
So how do you find time to sit with a book and draw what you have on this book here now, this amazing detailed array of flowers and images?
Again, I'm not doing that much. I've got this sketchbook out to pretend like I'm always sketching in it to make me look more arty. Since spend so much time on the computer. But it's it's something that we all battle with, and I found recently I'm doing much less on the screen and much more in terms of like I just came back from this amazing retreat run by the Naya Trust, and so cross-pollinating with all sorts of amazing people who are looking at interbeing through these different lenses, whether it's like tracking animals and like this, how do you track a wolf, and the sensitivities that you build up and the attention that you need to put onto reading the environment and the signs. There's an expert in that, an expert in Zen Buddhism, and all of these different ways of connecting to this idea that life is one big interbeing. It's so, and often the spiritual practices and the collaborations just lead to a flurry of ideas.
Yeah.
It's like, for example, Robert McFarlane's got a new book, Is a River Alive? I think that's what it's called. And so I haven't started reading the book yet. I saw the cover, someone told me about it. Now, at the moment, I'm listening to a whole load of YouTube interviews, and the next thing will be to go into the book, and then I'll have this out and I'll start making notes and and by the time I'm at the end of the book, I'll have too many ideas, but then from that, something is going to distill, because, we spent 4 years making this project of the human body as a river.
Yeah.
We did the whole cardiovascular system. It took us a long time to get all the medical data sets and but now we've built this system that you can apply to the branching network of a mushroom, or you can apply it to a tree. And really, like,
is there that much similarities in terms
it's all fluid dynamics.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all fluid. I think fluid dynamics are the kind of ballet of how things meet and merge, and your water flows through all living things. So in a way, the way that the water takes on sort of the shape of a stream, or the shape of a lake, it also takes on the shape of you, and it flows through you. Yeah. And what I love about, so Robert McFarlane's part of a team called Moth, and they're really engaged in how to create new policies to give rights to streams and rights to forests, so that they can. It makes total sense, because these boundaries that we put on things, just by the nature of language, we've got a tree over there, so it's like, a tree. So that the word tree is sort of contained within its bark, but then if you could see through the bark, you'd see that it's more like a river, and it's got all this golden glucose flowing down. It's like going down through root structures, becoming new cells, goes into the mycelial network. It goes into the fruit, and then into animals, and it flows out. But if you go a step further, that glucose is just sunlight that's been kind of slowed down, and the energy has been trapped. And then you're like, okay, so wait, the whole food web is trapped sunlight. And when one organism eats another, it's the transfer of energy from one body to another body. The whole thing is, and then you're like, oh, so trees are like these ancient beings that they're reaching for the light, and they've really mastered their craft, and they're at the foundation of life. They're like these ancient breathing high priests, and they're like rivers as well that reach for the stellar energy. So I think that the river as a metaphor, not actually as a metaphor, because it's just, maybe one way of thinking about it is that there's this interesting tension between naming something and sort of objectifying it. And scientific reductionism is kind of like looking at stuff and it's trying to figure out how it works. So it breaks it into its pieces and everything gets labeled. But there's also branches like Earth system science that are looking at all of the relationships. So, you might be part of a lab that's just looking at a cell, and there might be another lab that's looking at the bigger picture. And then there's a satellite view where you can see photosynthesis from space. Something that's happening in a cell can be seen through carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere. So you can go from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. So I think where we're really interested is how you can see the bigger picture and make connections, and it's all in the relationships. And the movement between things is often fluid dynamics and branching patterns. So once the more you master how to kind of push particles, and then you can describe anything and flow from anything, from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. So I still think that we're kind of at the beginning of where this could lead, because right now there's huge pushes forward in terms of incredibly rich data sets and incredible resolutions in terms of the lens of science and what can be seen. But then you've also got this ability to simulate that. So for example, we've got a piece at the moment that's just looking at breath on a global scale. And so it's showing wind essentially. And to do that, they've got hundreds of thousands of data points, and they put that into a supercomputer. It's owned by NASA. It just makes a simulation, but it's also the same kind of system they use to predict weather. Wow. But you end up being able to see stuff that is incredibly beautiful. You get like this wind shadow from Hawaii. It just has all these back eddies because you get the trade wind in a certain direction. So you can kind of see the continents and just by the movement of the air.
It's such a unique lens. Just share a little bit around the project that you did. I think it was when you guys went to the Amazon and then you did some research with trees there. And I think it was part of a project with a spa company in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that project.
So I didn't get to go to the Amazon.
Did you not?
My little Bambini was coming out, so I was fully focused on other areas. Another Ersin Han Ersin, who's my right-hand man. We do a lot of the creative development together. He went and did that trip, and so they went out, 3D scanned a K-pop tree, and also there's a wonderful sound designer called James Bully who we work with. He's a composer, but also really specializes in field recordings. So he had hydrophones and a whole range of different microphones that can like listen to the gurgling of water through root structures. There's one which is like a contact microphone, and you can hear what's happening inside the tree. And even with the leaves, he was using these piezo microphones, and when a raindrop hits a leaf, you get the. But then he was like, oh, but each leaf is like a differently tensioned drum skin. So he's there like waiting for raindrops and catching different leaf shapes. So we love people like that who just kind of get lost in the detail. Yeah. Because all of those sonic details, when you capture things in a certain way, you can then rebuild them spatially. And so when you're creating virtual worlds or immersive experiences, trying to give someone the sense of presence of being there, then it's really important to kind of get the ingredients in a way that you can then create a digital twin. Yes. And we're not trying to replicate what that ecosystem looks like. The digital twin is about what can't you see? So if you were there, you would never be able to go inside the tree. No. You never be able to see that your out breath flows into the leaves or the leaves out breath flows into you. But when you make it in VR, you can have like a breath sensor, a heart rate monitor. And so you can see all of that. Like we did this experience where 7 people are in a forest together and they could see oxygen flowing through their cardiovascular system. And when they breathe out, it's a big fluid sim. It's sort of, people got really into like making little vortexes, wafting it around. It starts to flow into the plants and you see the inner structures of the plants. Then there's a big rainstorm. It's quite dark and moody. And then so you're hearing the rain, and then you start to see under the soil, you can see water flowing through the roots. And so some people twig that and they get onto all fours and they're like, oh, you see them crawling around. And then as the water rises, it's in a sequoia tree, this one, as it starts to rise up, everyone starts to lift with it and they go all the way to the top of the tree. And at the canopy, there's these rivers of oxygen connecting people to plants. And it's a little bit like an umbilical cord. It's quite trippy as well. So it's not about trying to replicate something. It's about, experiencing these unseen dimensions of relationship in a way that I was so chuffed that there was one message there where somebody had said they had a tree outside their house and now they stop on the way to work every day to just, and they can remember that process of breathing. So they have a little suckle and then off they go.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. How does technology play a part? Because I know, it's the enabler, not the lead, not the reason why you do it necessarily. But how is the technology evolving? You mentioned certainly on the scientific side, but also like the tools that you have now available to go, okay, we can create these lenses for people to see inside of a tree and other projects as well. So how has that been evolving for you guys in terms of the tools and the techniques that you've been leveraging?
Yeah. So there's like the technology to observe, and there's all sorts of, that's like the expansion of perception. So whether you're looking up at the sort of ancestry in the stars through telescopes, or whether you're looking into the human body, those technologies are constantly improving. So I try and stay on top of that as much as I can, but we've got some amazing partners. There's a guy called Philip Withers, who's fantastic, and he's got a really deep understanding of all of the, he's part of Royce Industries, and they do a whole range of different scanning equipment. And so he's really, we often talk and he'll advise on, the human body, the synchrotron in Grenoble and the Human Organ Atlas, they're looking at the human body and they've got a big like cylinder, so you can get a whole head in there. And they're looking at a resolution that no one else has been able to see on the scale that they're. So if you think electron microscope, you have to choose a really small thing. Yeah. This X-ray travels a few kilometers, but you get very high resolution in a big area. So when you want to make a landscape to be explored, that's the kind of technology you need. And so now they've just sent us some data, and we are doing a project where we're like, what would it be like if you could explore your senses, but following the sensory stimulation think of your senses as like gates, kind of awaiting the nourishment of like the smell of soil or the taste of wild berries or the sound of birdsong. You could experience birdsong, very lovely, from inside your head, and then you can come out of your head, time because you're slow, right, and then you can just surf the sound wave into the ear canal. And if you've got high enough resolution, your ear canal will be like Antelope Canyon, like really high detail. And then those sound waves, like you would make sound visible, so you'd make beautiful patterns. And then as it hits the eardrum's going to kind of do its waka 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 thing. But then you realize, wait a sec, there's this little bone amplifier that takes the oscillations, the waveforms, and translates them like Morse code. And it pokes this It's like a fluid-filled sack with like a kelp forest on the inside. And it's just basically all of the sound waves you're hearing is like it's poking this thing at different hertz. And then depending on like the hertz of the poking, that just creates a kind of standing wave and sort of tickles the kelp in different points in this fluid-filled sack. Like if you want, it's a sort of seashell shape, but it's fatter at one end and thinner at the other, and so it gets the different frequencies depending on like the resonance. And already that's like, wait, what? So everything I've ever heard is via a bone pushing a sort of snail shell. And then there's this other bit of like, but then it becomes an electrochemical signal, and that's your whole reality is just electrochemical signals. And so it's kind of wild to think that we don't have access to that, although our reality is generated. It's a little bit like, because the reality is so exquisite. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. It's just hard to imagine that it's being generated within a black box, that it's like contained within bone. It's never really seen a photon. It's all just electrochemical signals in this complex network. And so just to try and step into that mystery a bit, and there's still a lot of unknowns, we thought, maybe we use the senses as gates. And at the end of a project like that, if you explore, maybe the smell of soil and the sound of birdsong, your senses have been molded through deep time in relationship to forests. We've evolved in forests. So there's no coincidence that when you hear birdsong, your stress level's lower. And there's an interesting paper where they say that birdsong in the brain lowers stress because when the birds go quiet, it means there's a predator about to attack. And so it's just there. So so there's all these layers to it. But I thought, what if you could do this experience exploring like the resolution of your reality, and you come out at the end so blown away that next time you eat a berry, you'll be like, oh, I know what happened there. Or next time you snip yourself up your own nostril, next time Smudge does an eggy one, I'll be like, oh yeah, we're connected.
How does that also, just because while we are on the senses, the breath project that you kind of referred to, tell us a bit more about that, because that was such an amazing project. It was
it's really similar to the senses, but just following the out-breath of the tree into the human. So the one I described earlier of the tree, that was like your out-breath into the forest, and partly the journey was the journey of water through the tree. But essentially the end of that project is the out-breath of the forest into you. And so this piece called Evolver picks up from that point. So you start in the atmosphere, and it's like you're really tiny, you're about that big, and you're just gliding, and you get pulled into a vortex, which is somebody breathing in. And this body is the size of a forest. So you get to go on the journey of oxygen through the body, but where all of your organs and the structures of the body are ginormous. Like the lungs are like oak trees, and the heart's kind of the size of, it's about the size of this room, actually, the heart. And so, and you kind of, it took quite a long time because we wanted to get really good data. For example, what does blood flow through the heart look like? And it turns out there's an outfit called Mavis, the Fraunhofer Institute, Mavis. And they had an amazing data set. It was just, the data was beautiful before we even got our hands on it. It's like, whoa. Because there's something about the perspective shift, that your heartbeat's so familiar, and you've got a relationship to that rhythm when your mum's heart is your sort of, your first moment of awareness. It's like, you've got this. So the sound of that and the feeling of that rhythm is something that is with you for your whole life. Sometimes you forget about it. Sometimes you're more connected to it, but no one's seen it. Like what? Because that rhythm has a fluid dynamic form that drives that feeling. And so to see it for the first time is almost like a pen pal, and you finally meet. You're like, oh, hello. So and I think And so we wanted it to be, or what does it look like? So it took us a while to get the data and figure out how to build it into our system. And that journey ends on, so that journey of oxygen, I heard it described by Stefan Harding, who was lucky to know while he was alive. He's amazing. He gave us this little photosynthesis song on his, I forget the instrument. It's like a ukulele. He's playing this song, but he was describing how the oxygen, so it's gone on this journey. It's left the, it's a byproduct of photosynthesis, and it goes on this journey. And the sunlight was trapped in food, and the food gets into your system. But in order to unlock the energy of the sun, which is trapped in the bonds in the hydrocarbons, the oxygen needs to break those bonds. So it really wants to get back, and so it wants to join the hydrogen to make a bit of water and to make some carbon dioxide. And as that, it's sort of like, it's like dynamite. It kind of unzips the hydrocarbon, and it's more complicated than this, but it's essentially that unzipping is the opposite of what happens in photosynthesis, where the sunlight is zipped up. Yeah. So it's like zipped into food and then unzipped. And the output of cellular respiration is exactly what you need for photosynthesis. So it's a perfect circle, but the energy of the sun is like the energy that fuels it. And so in those two kind of circles, you've got, this kind of expression of how plant and animal are connected, and life, so many of life systems rely on this kind of figure of eight shape. So in a way, we've got to a point where we've done this forest thing, we've done this human body piece, but there's so many layers still to explore. The sketchbook's full of new ideas, and it's all
see the word experience.
Yes, just kind of.
So Barney, how is this journey that you've been on with Marshmallow Laser Feast and the work that you've done, and this kind of labyrinth of collaborations that you've embarked on, like how has it changed you as a person? How has your view and perception of the world also changed along with it, with all these richness of insights that you've captured over the years?
Well, maybe I should read something from here to answer that.
Yeah.
There's this is quite a nice one. So, as the cricket's soft autumn hum is to us, so are we to the trees, as are they to the rocks and the hills. That's Gary Schneider. So I think it's actually not that relevant to your question, but it's a nice quote. But I think, actually Richard Feynman, he nails it, because he's got this lecture where he's saying, or it's just more like a conversation where he's saying, a friend of his is an artist, and they sit down, they talk about a flower, and the artist says to Richard, I can see details in the flower that you can't see, because I've trained my levels of observation to be able to see these details, and you can't really see those details. And Richard says, there might be an element to that that's true, but as a scientist, he can see details that the artist can't see. So, for example, the flower is red, and that's telling a story about the co-evolution with an eyeball of a pollinator. It asks the question, does the pollinator have an aesthetic sense like we do? And then there's all these other hidden details, like the photosynthesis and everything that's going on, within the body of the plant. The more you understand, the more you understand about science, you only ever adds to a sense of awe and wonder. It never subtracts.
No.
And I think that's, Memo, who we founded the company with, he put me onto Richard Feynman. So it was really him kind of like, check out this guy. There's lots of stuff on YouTube. He's so wonderful to dive into, a great science communicator. But once you get hooked on that, like any kind, whether you're doing meditation or you're sort of reading books on these sort of scientific insights, it starts to affect the way you see things and feel about things. And this whole company is set up around the realization that it enriches our lives, right? So in that, there's what an audience might get from an artwork we make is a fraction of what the team get from like diving deep into the subject matter.
Process.
Yes, it's just a really lucky to be able to do this stuff, and it, it just makes everything a little bit more beautiful. There's a beauty thing to it. Yeah,
there is.
It's just a kind of
what privilege.
Yeah,
lucked
out, and then smudge came into my life. It's, you know,
I mean, come on,
it's a beauty tsunami.
And just
this
one more project I wanted to just talk about, because it's one that's currently going on at Kew Gardens right now. The Oak. Share us a bit more about that one. Yeah, so again, like Ersin was leading on this one, but we cross-pollinate, and there's lots of conversations as the project develops. I think in the simplest sense, there's a wonderful oak tree there in Kew. And so we're going to put a big advertising billboard next to the tree, big LED screen. And so it also kind of blocks the view, which is a really iconic view. You've got this avenue of trees. And so how is like technology gonna, it sounds like a potentially bad idea, this sort of friction between technology and the tree, but it's all about the dialogue between the two. So can the screen content, the digital twin, show us something about the tree that changes the way you see the tree? And because they're there in the same space, they're in dialogue with each other. And straight away when the kids arrived, all these school groups going through, it's a dream. Like working with Kew as well is a dream, because they're the epitome of what we're talking about here. You just want to like latch on like a little leech onto these scientists and start suckling. Each one of them is so. The more questions you ask, you're like, wait, what? I want it. Yeah. Anyway, I'll try and stay on topic. So they've got incredible scientists, and so we worked with that team to be like, okay, so let's look at this oak tree throughout a year, like an annual cycle. What changes happen through the season? Like we were saying earlier, that a tree is more like a river estuary, and if you start to see it as a river, then it asks these questions of where does it begin and end, and there is no boundary. It's flowed out, and on the back of the you've got the LED screen that's showing you the inner systems of the tree, the mycelial networks, the changes in seasons. But on the back, you've got all of the species that live in relationship to the tree. And it's, I believe it's 3,200. And oak trees are particularly good in terms of being this sort of umbrella or this sort of estuary of symbiosis and relationship. It's a connector.
We're really, it's just the Kew Garden team and everyone was so wonderful to work with. So having it in that space and having so many people see it, but it also feels like it's a window into a virtual world. And so I definitely, each format has its own place, whether you're, exploring poetry. We've been doing a lot more poetry combined with spatial sound design, sort of meditations. Each form has its own way of engaging the imagination, but I still think that this idea of perspective shift is a way of sort of having an experience that cements itself within your memory, that VR is still or virtual reality, mixed reality is still the most profound, has the most profound possibilities. And so in some ways we see that as it's like a trailer to something that we want to make, where you can really go under the ground, experience death. Just that idea of death as a bookend doesn't make any sense.
No.
Right? If you look at a tree, the leaf, do you say the leaf dies when it falls off the tree? You're like, no, it doesn't die, because it comes back next year. And actually it drops off, and then its body, like the energy that was in the leaf, is just transferring through microbes and mycelial networks back through root structures, and it becomes, it flows back into the new leaves. So within that cycle, there's only ever this realization that life is an energy, and it's constantly flowing and looping. And there's no bookend of death. It's just that it's just changing form. And I wonder, I was talking to the Plum Village guys about whether a tree is a good metaphor for maybe like the spiritual dimension. So the idea that when you die, you're gone. I mean, clearly in terms of your sensory awareness or the way you think of your life, then it's a transition, right? But you could take a tree and think everything above the soil is where we exist. And so if you're a leaf on the tree, you live your life out, there's other leaves that fall off. And the kind of underworld where, we don't have any experience of that. We're kind of like, oh, I wonder what's happening there. If you take the metaphor of the tree, then, maybe it is that all of this energy and experience and everything that was you in some way flows back in and cycles back round. I guess that's a big mystery, but I love it when when you can look at nature and it gives you some kind of insight into, given that we are nature, it's giving you some kind of insight into what's going on a much more spiritual level.
Yeah, I think it gives you that query, that intervention to be thinking about, oh, wait, hang on a minute. If we're all part of that same system, then what is that? How is that? Yeah, I get that. Amazing. Barney, Smudge as well. Thank you so much for sharing. It's just for me, I'm taking away from this conversation a lens, definitely. I love this. I think you mentioned a previous discussion around this kind of Hubble's kind of telescope into the world, into nature, and what it what it unearths. But I think it's an important message. I mean, it's vastly important work that you're doing, because I think there's a lot of people just going about there every day, and there's so much more we can take from this amazing planet and this life that we have. Yeah. So I love that. I love the perspective, mate. Absolutely amazing. So, look, thanks for giving us a bit of just a glimpse into your how you think and the work that Marshmallow Laser Feast have been doing. So thank you, and of course, thank you for allowing us to come into this space as well and hang in Hackney Wick. Great space. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, mate. Thanks, man. Thanks, man. Cheers. I'm just sitting here contemplating and just trying to make a little bit of sense of this fantastic conversation we've just had with Barney Steel at Marshmallow Laser Feast. And let's just say we went down a number of rabbit warrens in this conversation as we kind of dive deeper into how he thinks, the work that they do, how they think about their work, and this kind of creative process that they embark on and actually have created for themselves ever since the founders came together. And it was very much, I would say, there from the start of this creative collaboration and this mindset, actually relentless mindset, to keep going deeper, to keep scratching away, to keep going under. And I think that really shone through for me today, just in not about what they do, but the how they do it. And I think one of the things for me is that they've curated some of the most amazing scientists and technicians and creatives and art lovers and art creatives in a way that they've created this space to leverage each other's knowledge and expertise, and in particular extract this kind of elixir of data that enables them to collect this data from nature in order to create these kind of profoundly impactful, immersive experiences for the public. And I think one of the things that I'm taking away from this conversation today is that there are other lenses that we can see the world through. And yes, we wake up every day and we have these lenses and we see the world and we have these automations and we get up and we go to work and we do these things, and that's fine. But Marshmallow Laser Feast for me is a representation of giving you another lens on how to see nature, how we have this similarity, this symbiotic connection to nature. And I think that one particularly has definitely moved me today. And I think I just want to leave you, and I hope you took this also from the conversation, is that this isn't about technology leading the way here. I know we're inundated with technology, but I think Marshmallow Laser Feast, I think what they do well is they don't champion, we must do this or we must do that. What they do is they use the technology as an enabler by capturing the data, by capturing what nature truly is and leaving it to us to form our own interpretation and our own perception of the world. So I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as we've enjoyed recording it. And until the next time, bye for now.